When I was a postpartum nurse teaching new mamas how to breastfeed, my patients always used to say, "I wish I could take you home with me." What if you could? Once I had my first baby, I got it. Going home and leaving behind that staff and support was hard, especially when it came to breastfeeding. Because the truth is, you need a place to turn to when it's the middle of the night, your baby is crying, and you cannot recreate that perfect latch from the hospital. You need at your fingertips education on how your body works, how your baby's body works, and how the two of you can work together to navigate supply, latch, routines, inflammation issues, bottles, pumping, and so much more. You can find all of this with me inside of my online course, The Breastfeeding Blueprint. On demand and yours to keep, you can start learning and preparing right now. To save 20% and get started for as little as $29 today, head over to thelabormama.com/breastfeeding or use the link in your show notes, and be sure to input the code podcast at checkout.
Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest, and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast. Mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast. We are going to talk about something today that I have not personally experienced with my 4 babies, but that my students, my clients, some of my friends have. And that when they do, when they have, I know that it can be a lot, both literally and figuratively. I have brought Bethany on from the Oversupply Mama. She is a CLC with a focus on exclusive pumping, oversupply, and neurodivergent lactation. She is a NICU mom, she's an autism mama, and she has experienced both birth trauma and redemptive birth. And you will hear a little bit about all of that in our conversation today. Ultimately, what I hope you get from this conversation, though, is a good idea kind of what oversupply is, how it can impact you for sure, and then resources and things to think about and think through as you prepare for your breastfeeding story. And then if oversupply is a part of your breastfeeding story, how to kind of navigate that and how to feel about that. Let's get into this conversation with Bethany. Bethany, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm super excited to get into this topic. Know that it's going to be really valuable for a lot of people. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us more about yourself. I kind of already gave your little official bio, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about yourself, your family, and what you do too.
Yeah, I'm Bethany. I am the Oversupply Mama. You might find that on like all of my platforms. But I talk specifically about oversupply. I'm a CLC, so lactation professional. And I kind of have a background in exclusive pumping. With my first son, he had a really rough start. So we were in the NICU. I ended up having an oversupply because I could only pump for him. And so with that, it kind of evolved into like, okay, no one's really talking about how to do this, how to do it well, how to pump well and with an oversupply. And it's kind of just grown from there. So my first son, Brevin, had a really tough start to birth. We were in the NICU. And then I just recently had my second son, Corin, and his birth was so redemptive. And it is just wild to me where we now have a nursing experience. And I never thought that I would get that. And just navigating this kind of dichotomy of like both and I can be exclusive pumping and nursing, like that sort of thing. So that's really special to have not only that be part of my story, but also being able to help parents in oversupply, in pumping, in nursing. I don't feel as comfortable with that, but it's so cool being able to talk to parents about that. So that's kind of my vibe and
Yeah.
what I'm about.
It's perfect. Thanks. I love actually the like both and idea in all of this too, because when I'm teaching or sharing with moms, I've always been someone who nurses more but wants to pump too for, the freedom or the babysitter or whatever. And so I think that that education of, hey, you can do both, and you can like nurse your baby to sleep once, and then you can give them a bottle once, and then you can pump like this is okay. I think it's easy to kind of think we're going to mess something up if we introduce something, or if like the goal is exclusively breastfeeding, which does include exclusively bottle feeding pumped milk as
Yes.
well. I think it's this
Yeah.
idea that like, I don't want to screw up maybe the nursing part, like nursing at the breast part, but you really
Yeah.
can do all of this together and hit those goals if the exclusive part is really a goal too. So I love when
Yeah.
people are saying, no, we can do both. We can do it in a healthy way. Like your baby can go back and forth. Like there's
And I think,
absolutely that relationship that can be
yeah.
available to you.
And I think part of the conversation with that is what we find and what the research shows us is that when pumping correctly and when it is done in a way where you know what you're doing, it
Mhm,
can help extend the time period that you are in your breastfeeding journey. So it can
mhm,
extend the duration of that, which
mhm,
I think is a lot of parents' goal is to make it to 6 months, to make it to a year, to,
mhm,
do all of these really hard but beautiful things. And when done correctly, pumping can help get us there. And I think
mhm.
that is left out of the conversation a lot of the time, where it's almost demonized, where it's, don't pump for the first 6 weeks, and
Right.
yes, depending on your goals and what this looks like, we can do both and we can incorporate that well into our journey, no matter what that looks like for you. And I think there's so many rules about, like, yes, there are really
Yeah.
specific and important things, but I think the beauty comes from adapting it well and figuring out what works well for your family and saying, yes, I'm going to do this, or,
Yeah.
I'm going to wait on that. I'm going to wait and see if that fits well for my family or no. And so I think that's
Yeah.
really cool when we can kind of shift and have this really beautiful ebb and flow instead of being so strict about this.
Yeah. You kept talking about like, if it's done, I'm going to say, well, like you said, or if you know how to, speaking to pumping, incorporating that in
Yeah.
healthy ways or whatever, how it can actually extend the breastfeeding
Mhm.
story. And I was just thinking about that, even with my own kids. I've just been someone who adds in a pumping session after the first few weeks to like make a little stash, which no, you don't have to do that. Like we could get into that, but like that's what we wanted to do, to be able to have a little bit to go away or whatever. And I'm thinking about even now, even when I've weaned, which we've been able to go past a year, I'm actually currently still nursing my 15-month-old, but I actually still have milk in the freezer that in theory will extend the journey potentially when we're done weaning. And it's not like we need it, right? At this point, it
Right.
doesn't have to be in the freezer, but there even is that little idea of like, let's say we weaned, or let's say she stops tomorrow, but if she'll still take that out of her water bottle, like she's still going to get
Yeah.
breast milk because I pumped that milk. And that's not like a reason
Mhm.
you must pump because then you can give it to your
Right.
baby when they're 15 months old. But
Yeah.
it is like that what you're saying is that extension of the journey, possibly just because I happened to pump and have some extra, and
Mhm.
like in my opinion did it in like a healthier, thoughtful way and knew what I was doing. I think that was your phrase, is if you know what you're doing. And so I didn't
Yeah.
interrupt or mess with the supply or our relationship, but I do have this milk that will continue to serve her, unless she
Yeah.
starts refusing it or something. But
Right. And that's such
that's
a
another topic.
confidence booster too, like knowing like, hey, I did this and
Yeah.
I was able to do this. I was able to kind of, put away a little bit in the freezer. And for some parents, that's not
Yep.
important to them, and
Yeah.
that's totally fine. But
Mm.
for some parents, like they one need to pump. We have to talk about the necessity of pumping too. For a lot of parents going back to work, and they
Yeah.
financially have to work, and we have to be able to talk about that and have that be constructive, and how to do it in a way that is going to support your body. There's a lot of
Hmm.
nuances when it comes to pumping, as far as flange size and how to do it well, and your equipment, and all of these they seem like very small things, but when we put them all together,
Yeah.
they can make a really huge, huge difference. So
Yeah.
it's been something that has brought a confidence in me, and I really hope that that is the case for a lot of other parents too. But it's brought forth this sense of self where it's like, I've
Hmm.
done this. And I think that breastfeeding itself, I use breastfeeding as like an umbrella term, whether it be
Yeah.
you're feeding
Right.
breast milk via G tube, you're nursing, you're pumping, all of that is breastfeeding. And it's so powerful. And I don't think a lot of folks realize how powerful it is until you're actually in it. You're actually doing it. You know the work that goes into it, and you've done it yourself. And I think
Hmm.
that is so cool.
Yeah. I agree.
Mhm.
After getting
Yeah.
to have done it a few times, it's a pretty
Mhm.
special thing for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go back to kind of what we were talking about is, hey, yeah, like doing this thoughtfully or doing it
Mhm.
well. And let's talk about those early weeks and what it
Yeah.
might look like, both specifically in regards to oversupply or maybe someone who has a history of it, but also just in general, like your thoughts on introducing the pump or not, and reasons you might want to, and reasons, hey, you actually don't really need to do this right now, and kind of that discussion for those really early weeks when we're just getting started with baby.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing to just be aware of too is that in the first few months of breastfeeding, of nursing, however you decide to feed, our body is producing a lot more milk. So we find that's really common for the first few months is to have a, whether you call it oversupply or you have a surplus. And so sometimes that can be harder to navigate. It can be really wonderful when you have a pump to support that oversupply because it can be so uncomfortable with clogs, with just feeling uncomfortable. It can be so helpful to initiate that and just relieve a little bit of pressure. Sometimes just that little bit can be so important. So it's kind of up to you on whether or not you want to introduce a pump right away. I have parents that bring their pump to the hospital and they're like, I'm going to do this right away. I'm going to get started on this. And there's no right or wrong in that. There's a few ways where you can specifically do that. You can pump after your nursing sessions. Usually we find that a typical pump session after a successful nursing session, it's not going to look like a lot, but it really does mean a lot. It can be like half an ounce to about 2 ounces or so, depending on you, depending on your supply. We find that that's really normal, even if it doesn't always look like a whole lot. That's kind of our normal and standard supply. And when we talk about normal and standard supply, I think a lot of parents also don't necessarily know what oversupply looks like. Typically, we find about if you're exclusively pumping 2 to 4 ounces is going to be more standard. Anything upwards of that, typically that's a little bit larger of that supply. So we can pump after our nursing sessions. You can
Okay, I'm going to
um
interrupt for a second
oh yeah,
because
go
you
ahead.
just
I'm
threw out
sorry.
well, no, you're good. You just threw out a number, and I know people latch on to numbers. So when you're saying like
Hmm.
typically, and again, there's a range
Yeah.
here, like 2 to 4 ounces, are you saying pumping that much after nursing at the breast, or
No,
that's like a standard pumping
that's
session just
that's if we
in
have not,
general? Right,
yeah, that's if we have not had a milk removal session
right.
prior to. Yeah. Hmm.
And so a
So,
2 to 4 ounce is a pretty standard
mhm,
pumping output, which makes sense, right? Because
yeah.
typically we all end up with babies who it's like, oh, they take about four
Mhm.
ounces, and then some babies will take more, maybe a little bit less, but that's like such a standard
Mhm.
kind of volume
Yes.
for a feed. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And we also have to consider like how often are you pumping? Is it every
Hmm.
3 hours on the dot or is it every six? If it's every
Hmm.
six, then maybe we talk about what that looks like as far as your supply. So there are so many little nuances when it comes to supply. So I don't want us to focus on the number exactly. Again, this kind
Right.
of ebb and flow, this fluidity that we're talking about. But in general, if we're pumping every 3 hours without a milk removal session prior to, in general, you're probably going to be looking about 2 to 4 ounces per pump session is
Hmm.
pretty typical and pretty normal.
And if you're consistently over that, let's say 6 or 6 to 8, you
Mhm.
might be someone who does. I guess I'm trying to
Yeah.
clarify for the moms who are like, do I have
Yeah.
oversupply? And then the next question would be like,
Yeah.
is it an issue? And if not, like if it's working for you, you're okay. But so
Yeah.
more than that, especially consistently or like multiple pumps throughout the day might be an indication, hey, your body's making
Yeah.
a little bit extra, especially if baby is not taking that all in as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we also have to be comparing our dyad. So we have to be comparing, like, what
Right.
is your baby eating?
Right.
So I always go
Exactly.
back to, like, what is your baby taking? Your individual child. If you are creating 10 extra ounces than your baby's eating, to me, I call them an oversupply. I call it a baby oversupply,
Yeah.
because it's not a whole lot, but it still is extra. So I really bring it back to, what is your baby eating, because we have to be comparing that. So anything outside of that is going to be oversupply, and it is going to be that extra that you're putting in the freezer, or that you're saving for milk baths, or whatever it may be. um
Mhm.
because we also can't compare, like, volume to volume. Like, if someone's baby is taking 20 ounces and, my baby's taking only 5, that's very, very different.
Right.
So, we have to really consider the individual in this
Right.
conversation.
Well, and one thing I like to always interject in these conversations too, as someone whose kids basically would never take more than 4 ounces at any 4 kids, and not one of them ever took a 6 ounce bottle or 8 ounce. Like if I had extra or what, like they wouldn't take it. But I think it's important to one, acknowledge that that's totally normal. My body like made what they wanted and they got it and that was it. They like didn't want more or need more. And two, that my body, there was nothing wrong with me or my body
No.
if it wouldn't pump extra or make extra. Like our body's jobs in theory are to make what our baby is asking for. And so those other moms who maybe were pumping extra, their kids were taking 9 ounce bottles, is like, that's great for you guys. And like your bodies are doing great together. And like me
Mhm.
and my kids, we're doing something different, but we're also doing great together. Because I think sometimes when we get in the supply conversation, there's this idea of, even if we look at our baby, right? Because how often we're like, look at your baby. How's your baby doing? Are they happy? Like, then hold on before you start freaking out about other things. And so even so in that conversation, I just think it's important to say, like, even if you're looking at your baby and they're doing great and your brain's trying to go over here and say, but I can't really pump extra, or I don't have a lot in the freezer, like you're still doing well. Like your body's still
Right.
making what your baby needs, which means it's doing its job. It's nice to
Yeah.
have extra. Maybe you want a little bit of freezer stash, but not to necessarily sit here and think like, oh, this is a failure, or I'm super frustrated, when you are either pumping, nursing, or doing both of those enough and your baby's
Mhm.
getting what they need in that 24-hour cycle. Like their body's doing a good job, even if another
Yes.
body does a different thing with their dyad.
Yeah, and a few things with that is, we have to remember that these larger bottle, that we might see on social media or things like that, kids who are exclusively breastfed, we find that the volume stays really consistent. And that's because your body is quite literally creating and changing the
Right.
composition of that breast milk. So you might find that your baby won't take more than 4 or 5 ounces through the entire journey. And that is beautiful. That is
Right.
wonderful, because that shows that your body is creating what they need from the bottom up, pretty
Hmm.
much. Oh, there was something else I was going to say and I lost it.
That's okay. I think it's just valuable to remind people of that. So
Hmm.
yes, I like fully
Yeah.
agree with what you just said too. That
Yeah.
is enough. Like you're
Yeah.
doing enough when your body recognizes what your baby needs. I mean, I just think that's
Yeah.
actually so cool. Not that it's not cool if a body makes extra or whatever. It's not like it's not paying
Mhm.
attention to what the baby needs, but I actually think it's really neat to see the harmony of, this is my body that makes 32 ounces a day and my baby wants
Mhm.
about 32 ounces a day, and that's what we do together. I mean, that's pretty cool to think that
Yeah.
that feedback system is all that intertwined and connected and speaking to
So
each other
cool.
like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. And getting on more of the conversation about oversupply and what that looks like to maintain it,
Yeah.
like, it's really hard to, one, be in a space where you're talking about oversupply on a consistent basis. And a lot of moms will say, well, I so wish I had that
Hmm.
problem. And I think we have to see both sides of that. Like, yes, it would be so wonderful if you could feed your baby and have this extra. That would be amazing and wonderful. But we also have to look at the concerns, and these are very valid and very real concerns that oversupply parents have, where we're purchasing extra freezers to literally accommodate for
Mm,
all of this breast milk. It's bagging up milk hours, sometimes hours a week, to make sure that it is safe, to make sure that we are providing for our babies and that we're keeping that safe. It's talking about how to remove at a very consistent way,
mm.
because otherwise, I had a mom tell me that she literally left the house once the first time postpartum and she got mastitis. And so we have to have these kinds of conversations as well. And, you know, sometimes when I'm in social media, in my Instagram, and I'm talking about oversupply, and it's almost like this, well, this is such a minimal problem because you can feed your baby a full supply. And it's almost giving to me, it's almost like, well, you're skinny, you don't have to have that problem, or you're large and you don't
Yeah.
have to have that problem. And I hate that. I
Yeah.
hate that because no matter where you are, no matter what kind of journey, what kind of milk supply you have, we all have our very individual concerns and things that need to be addressed. And as a lactation counselor, like I want to make sure that you're seen and you're heard. And I don't think that anyone's concerns should be minimized, regardless of your milk supply, regardless of what is going on.
Right.
And I think that's one of the hardest things as an educator to talk about is it seems so minimal, but really it is the same kind of stress, different stress. That's for sure. It's very different, but it's still stress on a parent.
Yeah, I know the mastitis moms that I've talked to and worked with are students who are saying, oh my gosh, I have oversupply. So I'm already like, how am I going to do this with the next baby? Just they've had it multiple times where they know it's going to happen again type thing. And I do think that it is a burden maybe that someone like myself doesn't fully understand, because it's not like, should you have oversupply, you can just turn it off, first of all. And second of all, like you have to manage it throughout, or you could end up, like you said, with some pretty significant inflammation issues, mastitis, recurrent mastitis. So I think that maybe the general public or those who don't have oversupply could think it's easy to just turn off, like, oh, if you don't want that issue, can't you just back it down type thing? And for a lot of people who have oversupply, it doesn't work like that. If you want to give your baby breast milk, that means you're going to deal with oversupply the entire time, which means pumping, like you said, cleaning, a time commitment, like a really good diligence about this kind of inflammation awareness. Like I could leave my kids and know like, oh shoot, I'm a couple hours late. Like I'm probably going to be okay. You know, like I've always had that privilege, I guess I would call it, of knowing that it'd be all right. And I have mamas and students who, I mean, they skip one feed, the baby sleeps a little longer at night. And it's like that quickly they're dealing with pretty, you know, significant issues. Yes, they're often like resolvable, or mastitis can be corrected, but it's not fun to go through that, especially over and over and over again. So I guess, yes, I'm just reaffirming that it is something that is easy for people to dismiss, because the reverse of it is like, you have enough milk for your baby. And so I'm going to say like, the person who may say like, I would kill for that, right? Like that type of mentality, which they do feel like they want to have enough, like that is primary goal, but that it does come with really significant, I'll say like struggle or complication alongside the privilege of, yes, we make enough. And it's actually one of the really hard parts of breastfeeding too. So
it's both and.
Totally.
It's
Again,
both, you know, you have this really beautiful journey where it's like, yes, I this is the part that I don't have to stress about, is having the volume. But also on the other hand, that volume is the stress.
Yeah.
So it's both and.
Yeah, definitely. To get really practical, I was telling you before we started, sometimes I feel like because of what we see on social media, or even me, I just was saying, I like to have a little bit in the freezer, you know, like these kind of messages, that there's the possibility that some of us almost like create an oversupply for ourselves. And then we have to end up backing that down later on, or we are, feeding baby and then pursuing this really full freezer, whether or not we even need it, just because we think that's like how this needs to be done. And then we have moms who truly do have some oversupply, or like you're talking about, where they can see the signs of it. So what do you suggest for moms really in either scenario, but to actually maybe start backing down a little bit, whether or not this oversupply is, I'm going to say real, like self-created or persistent, like it's not going to go away. But what are some steps that people can kind of take if they're thinking, I'm making too much, I need to peel back a little bit, really regardless of who you are? Where do they start with that process?
Yeah. And I'm going to just preface this right away. If this is something
Yeah.
of a concern for you, like I have a course that I'm like, it's actively being released right now. So I call it the No More Mastitis Weaning course, and it's specifically created for oversuppliers and exclusive pumpers. So I'm going to talk specifically about pumping because that is where my expertise lies. But a lot of that is
Yeah.
to go slow, very, very slow, even slower than, we hear about. I hear parents say like, oh, I dropped a pump in a week. Well, for a lot of oversuppliers, that's fast.
Yeah.
That's a lot of milk to try and cut back on. And so that can be hard for their body. But my suggestion to you is to go slower and to cut out a few minutes every couple days on a single pump session.
On
And
a
we talk
single
more about this
session. Yeah.
on a single session. I think a lot of the mistake is, I'm going to cut back, 10 minutes on all of my pumps. And that's where the
Right.
mistake lies, is where
Right.
it's too much for our body. It's too much. And you think about, like, even it seems fast, when we give birth and suddenly, or maybe not suddenly, for some folks,
For some
but
people.
we have milk. We have milk when our body did it a week beforehand,
Right.
which is wild to me. It is so wild. But then thinking about going the opposite, we have to be gentle with our body, and we have to give it the gentleness of how we started. And so I think there's this like now mentality where, we want to increase our milk supply and it needs to be now, or I want to decrease and it needs to be now. But in reality, our body is not a robot. Like, we have to give ourselves and pace ourselves and have our body adapt. And our body can adapt. We can increase supply ideally, within the first 12 months, even if not, beyond that. It's very, typically it's very adaptable, but when it comes to reducing that, we also have to give our body the time, the space, the peace to be able to do that gently and to keep our physical and mental stability in line. So my first recommendation is to choose one single pump session and focus on that. For a lot of parents, that can be your middle of the night session. That's typically where we start because sleep is amazing. And that's
Who
where we
wants
want
to do that one? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Another good place to start might be your dinner time pump. I don't know about your house, but my house is absolute chaos. And so that's a really great place to start, is to try and cut out a little bit more stress while cutting out that individual pump session. So taking it down a few minutes every few days until you're usually say between 5 and 10 minutes. If your pump is any more than that, probably take it down a little bit more. But if your pump session is between 5 and 10 minutes long, you can probably cut that out completely. And then, we talk about if you need to kind of help your body in that transition, you might hand express, or you might use your manual pump and just pump and for comfort, not a full session, but just relieve a little bit of that discomfort.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the oversupply conversation is really a weaning conversation too. And I think sometimes a lot of us associate weaning with total cessation of breastfeeding, but this is all weaning. Like, if you're weaning back from a pumping session, if you're weaning baby back from one specific feed during the day, like this weaning process can kind of be something that is not cyclical, and not perpetuity. It's not forever.
Ongoing.
Eventually they wean, but it could be ongoing for like a year, right? Like, my daughter already has been weaned back from the many feeds she was doing, and now we're down to like 3 a day. And I'm pretty sure we'll probably wean away from one more soon, and she'll just do 2. So it's like this kind of consistent weaning that's happening, which is to some degree, a consistent adjustment in supply. I think my supply is not super up and down at this point, her age, but certainly, there's still these little bouts of weaning, which I think I'm bringing up because I do think it's valuable when we think about supply, because we need to remember that it can bring along like emotions as our supply does change a little bit, that there's just more to it than just like lopping off 5 minutes of the time that you're nursing but pumping like we're talking about, that it is a process
The
that
emotional
is part
side.
of this big process. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I consider weaning to be anything where you're taking your current
Right.
scatter, your current schedule, and bringing
And
that
then
down
backing
any
up.
further
Yep.
than it already is.
Yep.
And dropping a pump, like to me, that's weaning. You're taking a little bit off of that, and there's some really, it's freeing for a lot of families.
Yeah,
It's freeing to
absolutely.
be able, like, oh my God, I don't have to get up in the middle of the night to do that. you know
Totally.
and I think it's definitely in the conversation, especially with
Mhm.
oversupply. We can do this, and it doesn't have to be like one and done, going down to absolutely zero. You can do this weaning process in stages, in steps. It can be very fluid, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
What do you say for someone who is doing this kind of gradual wean, like you're talking about from a session, and I'm going to say it's not working? Or like, what are some other steps? Like that would work for me, but I'm sure there are some people where it's like, yeah, it's not really working, or I'm getting mastitis, or kind of what about those moms who
Mm,
I'm going to say
it's
that kind of
hard.
initial intervention doesn't totally work, and they do need to back
Yeah.
up that supply for whatever reason.
Yeah, I find that with oversuppliers, a lot of times when they cut out sessions, they may not necessarily cut down volume.
Right. It just
It
moves.
takes longer. And so I
Hmm.
call it like a reallocation almost, where
Hmm.
your body is taking, let's say, your volume from 2 sessions, and now it's back into 1 session. So you have a bulk amount of milk in one single session. So we really do have to almost change our mindset. And it may not be as structured as we want it to be. And sometimes
Right.
sometimes that looks like going backwards and saying, my body really cannot handle this. I need to add in more time. And I
Hmm.
think that's also one of again, shifting that mindset where it's like, just because we have to take a step back, or what if you get sick, or what if your baby gets sick? I had a mom that I was, talking through weaning, and, her baby got sick, and she was like, I have to add in another pump session. Like, I have to take that back. There is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. We have to talk about like your individual situation. If your baby gets sick and you want to feed breast milk, oh my God, let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that.
Hmm.
If you're on the verge of like, I cannot physically handle another clog, I need to be using my pump more often. Oh my God, please go ahead and do that. My job is not to have you stay on this plan, although a plan is really nice to have. It's
Hmm.
amazing, and it can be really freeing, and it can be supportive for a lot of families. But sometimes, we have to be adaptable. And
Yeah.
I love that back and forth where we add in more time if you need it. If it's not working, if you're trying to cut these minutes down and cut your pump sessions down, and you're like, gosh, I'm really struggling. I'm really having a hard time with this, because this is the reality for a lot of families and a lot of parents. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to a lactation professional and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can we do the support together? Can we have
Hmm.
something together? Along with dropping pump like minutes, we also talk about extending time period in between our pumps. So
Right.
instead of being every 3 hours, we're now going to do every 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And then we're going to move it up and up and up. So it's,
Hmm.
again, this gradual, very slow process. I always say
Hmm.
slower is better than fast,
Yeah.
because we can really run into some tough, tough things when we go too fast.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you're out there and you're like, I don't have oversupply, but I do pump once a day or something, like my recommendation still is really slow when you back that up too. Like why invite an issue when you can slow it down just a
Yeah.
tiny bit and know know that you're not gonna
Yes.
invite some sort of inflammation problem. Like if you can go
And
slow, just
you
take the
also
time to go
mentioned,
slow.
yeah, yes, you also mentioned the emotional period of that. And
Yeah.
there's so many emotions impacted with weaning, because we think about breastfeeding and we think about the idea of lactation itself. And oxytocin and prolactin are like running rampant through our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And that literally changes our brain and our brain chemistry and how we approach every aspect of our lives. It's this calming that gets it's surging through us. And then when we stop that and when we take it down, your body is almost like withdrawing in a sense, and
Mm-hmm.
it's changing. And so a lot of parents will be like, I thought I was ready for this, but I am a
Yeah.
mess. I
Yeah.
am emotional. I'm angry at my partner, and that's very unfortunately normal, and it's okay. Like there's a lot of emotional impact when it comes to weaning that where you're like, oh my God, I'm saying goodbye to part of myself. If you
Yeah.
have been breastfeeding for a longer period of time for this extended breastfeeding, it's almost a sense of like, to me, my milk is part of myself, even when it's outside of my body.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say goodbye to that, it's almost this mourning, this like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, we're on to the new chapter, we're on to our new set. So
Yeah.
it can be really hard. And my recommendation is just to feel that. And I'm always see a therapist if you need to as well. Like that did me so good in my first postpartum journey with my son when we
Yeah.
had birth trauma, when we were in the NICU, and I did not have this beautiful nursing journey that I obviously expected to have. And I
Mm-hmm.
was thrown into exclusive pumping. I had to figure it out, bootstraps by myself,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to do both and be so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for where we are, where we've come, be ready for weaning, and also in the same breath, be sad that it's over. Like we can
Yeah.
do both,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Gosh, this is a separate conversation, but also thinking about weaning and how not only like prolactin and oxytocin when they're falling related to weaning, but then that also means that your cycle might be able to return. So then you're bringing in like progesterone and estrogen and what they all do if our cycle does happen to come back during one of these, weaning
Mhm.
processes or prior. That it isn't just as a lot happening in your body. And I think sometimes you have this idea of like, all right, I'm peeling something back and I don't want to say things are going to get easier, but like I'm removing a responsibility maybe from myself, from my body. And it's like, well,
It
but
should get
yes, but then your
easier, right?
regular cycle might come back and whatever that brings along. So it's like almost more of a flip flop back to like one for the other. And so it
Yeah.
can just be emotionally a lot when really you're thinking about it as a physical thing and times and quantities and all of that. And there's this whole other part of
Yeah.
the spectrum that is very real and very much a part of it too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And for me at least, it's like feel it. Like feel it because it's so real to you. I don't care what anyone else says. Like they don't know how you feel inside your body, but that's your truth and that's
Yeah.
your reality. We're saying goodbye to a chapter, and
Yep.
that's okay to be sad about it, or it's okay to, have these very big emotions,
Yeah.
and that's very valid. So you're
Yeah.
not you're not crazy, even though if you
No.
feel like you're like, oh my God, what is going on?
Well, it's funny because the reverse, I'm also thinking of the people who are listening. They're like, are you kidding me? I was so happy to be done. I was clicking my heels and burning my pump.
Yep.
And like, that's good too. Like it really does hit us
Yep.
all in really different ways. And I think it's, you keep saying like, you can feel both, but like you can have both. Maybe you just have one or the other. That's okay too. Like there's a
Yes.
lot inside of this story. Okay. Anything else? I know that like there's 16 different rabbit trails that we could go down, but anything else that you would want to add kind of to those? I would say almost those who maybe two messages. One, never breastfed a baby. So what should I be thinking about heading into this in terms of supply? Like I know what I would say, but I'd be curious what you would say as well. So that with no history, and then like almost to your first time mama self, and then to your second time mom self who did have oversupply and did have that, like how to approach kind of going into that when baby is not quite here yet, and how to think about, I don't know, like best plan, not best
Yeah.
plan necessarily, but getting started and what's coming next for you.
Yeah. Well, if I'm looking at my first journey,
Mm-hmm.
I would say make sure you're using a pump that is going to be supportive. I started off with a pump that
Mm-hmm.
was, for all intents and purposes, absolute garbage. And so being able to have your
Mm-hmm.
tools at your disposal if and when you need them. And so being
Mm-hmm.
able to have that adequate equipment is really important. We see all these really sexy and really beautiful pumps online, but
Yeah.
where is their place in our journey? Is it going to be supportive of our entire supply, or is it the purpose of being convenient? So that's my first step, is make sure you know your equipment. That's that's one of the biggest things that I find, is that we may not know our equipment right
Hmm.
away. And then if I was going into this, my second journey is, there is so much freedom in being able to create the schedule that you want to do,
Hmm.
and being able to go outside of the house and know how to use your pumping, and being comfortable with that, and not caring what other people think that you're
Hmm.
pumping, whether it be with traditional flanges or your wearables, but being able to live your life while being outside and doing the life stuff. You can do that outside of your home. You can pump. It's
Hmm.
protected. It's the same way how it's protected with nursing in all 50 states here in the US, where you are allowed to do that
Yeah.
within whatever feels good to you.
Yeah. Perfect. I
Mhm.
want to narrow in on you talking about really quickly for that first timer, especially that like
Yeah.
have your stuff ready if or when you need it, and just understanding like you might not deal with this at all. And that's great. So don't expect that this is going to be something that's going to challenge you, or don't be worried about or unnecessarily anxious about it. And just know that there are tools to help those who have oversupply, and educators if that becomes part of your story. And it very well
Yeah.
may not be part of your story. And so this might not be as, I don't want to say complicated, because oversupply doesn't have to be
Yeah.
complicated. You can figure it out, but it might not be as challenging
Mhm.
as some of this. Like you may not ever have to really deal with that. And that's great too. So I just want to like plant that seed of, yeah, that this is this is an if conversation for some people, not a win. So be ready and be
Yeah.
prepared and know your resources, and also know that this might not be part of your breastfeeding story. And that's great too.
Yeah. It's hard to know until you're creating milk and you're
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's oversupply, it does not have to be a bad thing, just like you said.
Right.
It can
Right.
You can keep your oversupply and be
Yep.
totally happy with it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've done, is I probably could have weaned down, but I I like to play games with myself and pretend and see how much I can make. Or like, what happens if I try this? What happens if I, and to me, that's where the joy of pumping comes in. And a lot of people don't think pumping is joyful, but
Yeah.
I personally do. I think it's such a gift that we have this technology where we can be supportive of oversupply and literally create an entire, my grandma could never, but like we can
Yeah.
absolutely do this
Yeah.
in this time and age. And I think it's such a tool, and it's such a gift. And I really think that
Yeah.
we can start talking about pumping as a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely. I love that. Also, not to mention, if you do make a ton of extra and you don't need it, you can donate, which is another combo too. But that's a really cool gift too. So don't forget about that
Mhm.
if this
Yeah.
is something that you run into. That's a pretty awesome thing
Yeah.
to do as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, Bethany, why don't you tell everyone? I think you mentioned it earlier when we started, but just kind of where they could find you, maybe check out this course that you just mentioned to us, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you can find me at the Oversupply Mama on Instagram, on TikTok. My website is theoversupply.mama.com. And the
Okay.
course that is currently on pre-order is the No More Mastitis Weaning course.
Okay.
Basically, almost it gives you a little bit of a snippet when we were talking, but we
Yeah.
go really into depth about the different techniques, about how to adjust and adapt to weaning for your individual body.
Hmm.
What are the signs where weaning is going well, and the signs that we need to let up a little bit, and how do
Okay.
we adjust that to your individual journey? So we go really into depth. It's a signature course, and it's a year in the making. So I'm so excited that it is being put out to our families who need it.
Okay, perfect. And then last question does not have to be related to anything we just talked about. I just love to ask at the end, what is one thing in your life that's just sparking a ton of joy for you right now?
Oh gosh.
I know I
My
put you on
son,
the
my
spot.
son, my oldest is autistic. We just found out that
Okay.
he is, and so just being able to check in with him and play in a way that supports him. Like right now,
Mhm.
we are all WWE all the time. He's jumping, he's climbing, I'm throwing him on the couch, and I get to be the fun mom and play with him in a way that supports him. And like, I always forget to do that. Like, I'm like, oh, let's not do that. And so that's what's
Mm,
bringing me a lot of joy is we get to just be crazy outside and we get to just be wild and I get to be a fun mom and I love that.
mm,
So that's
mhm.
what's bringing me a lot of joy is, investing in him and how he experiences the world.
I love that. I like the idea
Mhm.
of freedom. I think sometimes with social media and just all of our inputs, we almost get the opposite, right? We're like, I shouldn't do that. And I shouldn't do that. And I shouldn't do that. And oh my gosh, I've screwed everything up. So, for whatever reason, if someone grants you freedom to do something in parenting and you can take it, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to feel a lot more joyful because instead of feeling like I'm screwing up, you're like, this is actually exactly what I'm supposed to do. And it feels
I'm
great. So,
I'm
I
such
love
a
that.
type B person. I'm such a type B person that this is
Yeah.
already on my plate. Like I love it so much, but like just leaning into
Yeah.
that where it's like there are no rules. I can do whatever. I'm
Right.
in charge of
Right.
humans. First of all, that's wild, but
Sounds yeah, it is. Well, and to this
Mhm.
type A mom, I'm like, no rules. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We need to calm down. So that freedom though, that is that is great if you can embrace that. I need more of
Yeah.
that in my life too.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here with me
Mhm.
today. And yeah, for doing what
Such
you're
a
doing. I think
joy.
that the population who needs you, they really need you. And so it's important to have people like you out there helping those families. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was such a gift talking to you. This was so special. And the communities that you touch with birth and, this is so important. And I loved having this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks, friend.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder for you before you go. Opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in your show notes.